What's up, guys? My name is Chris. I'm with Tile Nation. Today we're going to be going over some diamond tooling, specifically for gauged porcelain installations and fabrication. Typically after you score and snap a panel, if you have an L cut in the panel, you'll go directly into drilling out those inside corners to create a rounded inside corner and eliminating all those micro fissures on the top side, bottom side, and in the body of that panel. This reduces some of the stress that the porcelain is under and keeps those fissures from wanting to create cracks that transfer through the panel, which you do not want to have happen. One thing I'll jump into first is 1/4-inch fuel line, okay? When you have your 6 mil, 8 mil, whatever size bit you're using, remember the thickness of your panel equals the radius of your inside corner for that L cut or inside that square or rectangular cutout in the center of your porcelain. One thing that you want to do to help prevent you from breaking the panel with the head of your drill is putting a 1/4-inch fuel line over the end of your drill bit. What this does is once you get through the porcelain, you can go down and hit that porcelain as hard as you can with the rubber without breaking the porcelain. Without this rubber on there, we won't do it. But I promise you, if I did again what I just did without the rubber on here, I'll break this porcelain. So this little piece of rubber here, it will save you plenty of slabs when you're drilling out those inside corners. Another nifty tool we use quite a bit is the Ruby hole saw guide. This thing has plenty of suction. I could probably suck this down and move this whole panel with just that suction cup. So once you get this aligned right where you want it, it's not going anywhere. It does have a port for water feed, as well as little cutouts for some of your smaller bits you can fit inside this hole and not have to rely on that V-shaped groove. I use this 4-inch hole saw quite a bit. As you can see, the V-groove is a little bit smaller than what the size of the diamond hole saw is, but it still works perfectly fine. These are Bosch hole saw bits. I've been using these quite a bit. They do have a quick detach on them, which makes it really nice. You're not dealing with any Allen wrenches or any of the compression locks like you see on a lot of hole saws. And usually whenever we're drilling using these smaller bits, we're using monolith cooling gel. We've tried some other cooling gels. I've even tried welding tip gel, and it's not the same sauce as monolith cooling gel. So this stuff it's pretty tacky. It's pretty malleable. It's kind of like Vaseline. I don't know what's in it. Couldn't tell you, but it works amazing. Same with these Bosch hole saw bits. I usually use a lot of water on these. Usually set up a little water bottle with a P-man, drill a hole in the water bottle, just let that water hit the side of your hole saw bit as you're drilling. After you drill your holes out, and you'll move directly into cutting the porcelain. Most of the time what we're using on 90% of the porcelain we cut is the Monolith CSS 100 blade. They're 4-inch and 4.5-inch. And for straight cuts, you can use the tutor cut. You can take the backing plate off your grinder, slide this tutor cut on, the blade sits on top of the tutor cut, get a few threads on your nut here. And what this allows is, as you're grinding, this tutor cut stays flush against the top side of the porcelain, eliminating the walking in your blade. So it just keeps your blade at a straight 90 degrees. The tutor cut, I will say, whenever you're first starting out, you're doing straight cuts on gauged porcelain, I highly recommend the tutor cut. We're all really good with a grinder nowadays, but when you're messing with a $1,000 slab, it's nice to have that little bit of extra insurance. One thing I will mention too, before I dive into the Helion blade, is the Rockin' Red dressing stone. This has a higher concentration of aluminum oxide in this dressing stone. These dressing stones have a little bit less carbodunium, if I'm saying that right, carborundum in these dressing stones, so they do open up the diamonds quite a bit better. These dressing stones are actually heated in a furnace up to 1,280 degrees for 4 days, and that's how these dressing stones are made. So considering the amount of labor it takes to create one of these, they're fairly cheap, and they will save your blades quite a bit, keep them cutting a little bit longer than what they would if you did not dress them. When you go to dress a blade, any blade for that matter, it is better to dress that blade with using water. The Helix Helion on our blade, we do use this on some darker bodied Gauged porcelain. It is a little bit more aggressive. It has that mesh rim, but it's also a flush cut. So I do catch myself using this blade quite a bit for miters, just so I don't have that arbor on the drill potentially catching the edge of that miter on the porcelain. Once you have your inside cutout made, we'll use these milling bits or finger bits and go in and dress up those inside corners. This is a 5/8 inch milling bit. I'll use this a lot on 12 mil if I'm fabricating 12 mil. Most of the time that size porcelain goes to my fabricators and I'm just installing it. We have 8 mil, 6 mil bits here as well. These are really handy to get inside that inside corner and just kind of work that inside corner back a little bit. Get rid of all of those fissures and little cracks that you created whenever you were drilling out those holes. The cone bits, we're using these quite a bit. I know some guys use these to dress up those inside corners as well. These smaller cone bits, I do occasionally too, right? It's just whatever's on the grinder. If I got a milling bit on there, or if the smaller cone bit's on there, I'll just use whatever's on the grinder. The larger cone bit, I use this a lot for sinkhole cutouts, maybe faucet cutouts if it's a larger cutout for a tub faucet or something like that. But they do both have their place. Moving over to the flap wheel discs. So these things, they do have a solid backing on them. They have little sheets of aluminum in here on cardboard and diamonds in between them. They're meshed in. They're really handy. The green is 60 grit, black is 120, red's 200. Most of the time I'm using 60 grit, and I skip the 120 quite a bit and move down to 200. But the 120 certainly has its place. Usually when I'm messing around with decked in 4 mil, some of the thinner material, I will actually use the 120 quite a bit. Okay, so after I finish up with these flap discs, usually I'm moving over to the Helix Quattro pads. You can see I have 3 different backer plates for these Velcro pads here. This one's aluminum, it's a hard back plate. I'll use that quite a bit on straight cuts. This is a medium backer plate. I know sometimes if I'm not removing a lot of material, I'm kind of finessing that edge. Maybe I want to remove just a little bit of material, I'll go to this medium backer plate. You can tell it's rubber, it's a little malleable, has some give to it. And then the yellow is really soft. Like I can bend that thing quite easily. I catch myself using this backer quite a bit when I know I've got a lot of inside corners to dress up with these Quattro pads. Moving over to these Quattro pads, we've got a 50 grit, 100 grit, 200 grit, and 400 grit. The 50 grit, it's not as aggressive as the 50 or 60 grit flap wheel. I do use the 50 grit quite a bit when I'm messing around with some of the thinner materials. Decked in messing around with some of the materials like decked in 4 mil, 3.5 mil, and 3+. There we go. Got that right. So getting into the 100 and 200, usually I'm just finessing those miters quite a bit whenever we do the not knife edges, so we don't do knife edges, but we do a lot of quirk miters. So usually these 2 pads come in handy whenever we're fine-tuning those quirk miters. After we get done with all the diamonds, right, we're ready to assemble all of our pieces that we just fabricated. A lot of times what we're doing is on furniture pieces, we're setting them with epoxy. Usually use Ardex WA. or an equivalent. And what we'll use for fine tuning those miters is G-tape. G-tape is a little bit more pricey than painter's blue tape, but it's quite a bit stronger, right? Peel it off and it tears clean every time. So you got a nice straight piece every time you tear it. The cool thing about G-tape and adjusting those miters is you can put quite a bit of force on this stuff, right? It takes quite a bit to break it. If I were to do that with blue tape, it would have already broke. So I would say you're respectfully able to get probably 60 to 80 pounds of pulling force out of G-tape, which makes it really unique for us when we're fine tuning those miters. After we set those pieces, we'll go in and epoxy those cork miters. A lot of guys will use RXWA, some will use 10X titanium, or one of the other many flavors that are out there. Once we do that, we'll come in with some silicone carbide sandpaper. Silicone carbide is really hard sandpaper, so we usually use these Lot Fancy packets. They're on Amazon. I think they're 10 bucks. They range from 80 grit to 3000 grit, and they're about 3.5 inches by 9 inches. So usually you can take one of your diamond pads, wrap this around your diamond pad, and use different surface areas on this sheet of paper as you go along. I found that to be very economical. With these diamond pads, you notice this has sharp corners on it. This is good for getting in tighter areas. Maybe you have an infinity niche and a miter on the top and bottom. You want to get really close to the wall and polish up the epoxy on that miter. That's what I'm going to use this for. This one has rounded edges on the sides. I use this a lot on just straight miters, nothing crazy there. And for applying the epoxy, these 2-inch little plastic putty knives on Amazon, they're really cheap. I think you get like a pack of 10 for like $5 or $6. So they're not bad. And the last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was MLT. So MLT, it's the only approved lippage tuning system per ANSI. The reason for that is it has a mechanical fastening system in the base of these straps. So these little cutouts allow just enough mortar to encapsulate this base with thin set. So typically when you slide a lippage tuning device in behind your tile, there's no gaps there. What it does is it pushes the thin set down and away from the base of the strap. These straps have the little cutouts, and they're also little channels in the base of the strap as well that allow that thin set to flow over the top of this strap and encapsulate it. Those straps are going to be most commonly used. These are metal straps. They're really thin, and you have to apply the base to these straps. So you can reuse the metal straps and just buy new bases. No manufacturer, Gauged Porcelain manufacturer, is probably going to approve of a joint this small, but if you're someone that likes your joints really, really tight, MLT's got you covered. So usually what we'll do is slide the strap in, throw your cap on, and the cap, you can see, you can either slide straight down and lock in, or you can just go down off to the side where it's free. That comes in handy in some tighter areas, and then slide the strap over, lock it into the cap. You can tighten it down using the gun, and whenever you're ready to remove that, put it to snap, and it breaks the strap. Reuse your strap, base stays in behind the tile, and you're good to go. That's what we use for the MLT stuff. A lot of advantages to that, and these are all the diamonds we're mainly using on a day-to-day basis. And thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below.